Very much. Welcome to Tuesday, the 21st of September.
I'm on. I'm just having difficulty with my camera at the moment.
Okay, we'll wait for you to catch up, but I'll carry on with the beginning of the meeting. Good morning. This is our fourth meeting of Cabinet held under the new arrangements. And to remind those who have joined us online, this meeting is a consultation with Cabinet, as I have, for the time being, delegated the ability to make decisions to the individual portfolio holders. Previously, Cabinet took decisions collectively, but instead of the usual roll call of members to take the decision, I will seek via a show of hands Cabinet members' general agreement or disagreement with the recommendations in each of the reports. Following this consultation, the decisions of the individual portfolio holders will be published on or before Wednesday, the 22nd of September 2021, and implemented the following week from the 23rd of September, unless a call-in procedure is involved. So I'd like to move on to the main body of the meeting. Apologies, Tom?
No apologies, Chair.
Thank you very much. Item 2, announcements from Chairman and or Head of Paid Service. I see Mark shaking his head. Thank you very much. So item 3 is declaration of interests. Are there any declarations of interest? Alan, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Item 7, Highways Term Maintenance Contract Extension. A close family member works for a subcontractor of Tarmac in Rutland. I shall take no part in that debate or vote.
Thank you for that, and duly noted. Any other declarations of interest? No, thank you. We now move on to item 4, which is record of decisions. To confirm the record decisions made at the meeting of Cabinet held on the 27th of July 2021. Do we need to show our hands for this one, Tom?
Yes, Leader.
Are we all happy that this is true and accurate record? So if we can all show our hands, please. Fantastic, thank you. David has obviously disappeared. Karen.
Chair, sorry, at the last meeting I wasn't present.
Okay, sorry, we won't count you in. David currently is not present, so if we could just note that, please, while he rejoins the meeting, hopefully. Item 5, items raised by scrutiny.
None, Leader.
Thank you very much. So we now move on to item 6, which is the property asset review, procurement of consultants and other related matters. So you have the report in front of you. It's seeking to authorise the strategic director for places to appoint a consultant via the SCAPE framework to carry out surveys and other assessments necessary for the property asset review. Delegates the authority to strategic director of places in consultation with the portfolio holder for property to commission further consultancy advice from the SCAPE framework as necessary. And item 2 is approves the budget allocation of £205,801.49 from property repairs earmark reserve to support the property asset review. Over many years, the property has been managed in a way that has not necessarily been easy to follow, and with the churn of staff, then the records have been less than perfect. So this gives us an opportunity to bring it all into one space with a very structured and very clear plan to go forward and ensure that we get the best from our assets, and we can then also feed into the asset disposal should we see that as necessary going forward. So understanding what we have is key and paramount. I'm happy to take any questions. I think we've got Director of Places here to also help. Councillor Payne, you have your hand up.
Chair, could I just ask that we have a budget allocation of £205,801. The point number 1 gives permission for further consultancy, but could I make the point that the further consultancy shouldn't exceed the budget that we're approving 1.2?
Thank you very much. I saw that the Director of Places was nodding her head, so I think we believe it can be done within budget. Is that right?
If I may, in terms of the budget allocation, that is specifically to support the asset review process. What we are seeking is approval that, if necessary, that we have the ability to draw down for further consultancy, but that would be subject to additional approvals if further budget was required. So, for example, there is a piece of work that we'd like to undertake to inform the procurement processes for waste and highways around commissioning review of depot provision. That potentially would need additional budget requirement. If that proves to be the case, then obviously we would be coming back to Cabinet for that approval. What this recommendation does is give us the ability to draw down against the procurement framework without having to go through another procurement process, should we need additional advice.
Could we clarify then that if further budget is required, then you will come back to Cabinet?
Yes, we can certainly do that. Thank you. Councillor Stevenson, you have your hand up.
Thank you, Chair. I really welcome this review. As outlined in 2.3, we absolutely need to look at what property we have in that portfolio and, crucially, what infrastructure we need to deliver the services of this authority going forwards. My one question was that within this, I'm aware that we've got our baseline carbon assessment coming. I'm assuming that carbon emissions of the various buildings will be covered under that piece of work rather than this piece of work.
I don't know whether the Director of Places could just answer that. I'm sure it is, but thank you. You got your hand up again.
Yes, so the carbon emissions will be picked up through the of our directly owned stock will be picked up through that carbon baselining process. Through the condition survey, they will be looking at energy efficiency as one of the considerations.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rozelle, you have your hand up.
Chair, thank you. Again, I welcome the paper, and it's a comment rather than a question. I think all residents would agree that in looking at the assets we have, what we're looking to do is drive down the ongoing costs of ageing estate. So I welcome the paper, and I think it's a really positive step forward.
Thank you. Any other comments? No. So with those slight alterations to the recommendations, are we happy to agree with them? So if we could have a show of hands, please, just to be clear. Thank you. I believe that's unanimous. Thank you. We now move on to item 7, which is highway term maintenance contract extension, which is over to Councillor Stevenson. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair. As you're aware, our current contract for highways maintenance is due to end in December 2023. We currently have a project board that is undergoing the work on the re-procurement of that. With the end of December 23 as is at the moment, it is felt that this presents a notable risk to the authority in terms of its inconvenient contracting and resourcing halfway through a season. So that would include things as such things as grit, the vehicles, the specialist vehicles we use, and of course the trained operatives. This has a potential knock-on of them being less attractive for potential bidders when we go out to tender for that. So therefore, what I'm asking is that we can extend the contract for 6 months to mean that we have a nice clean start, as it were, in 2024 with the winter maintenance delivered to our usual high standards. You will also note within the existing 10-year contract, we have now exhausted all possibilities for extending within those terms. Therefore, I do require council approval in line with the regulation as detailed in the report. For those of you panicking, thinking, crikey, we keep extending, that is actually standard practice within the terms of the existing contract, because it allows us as an authority to review and evaluate the deliverability of that. So that is a sort of perfectly usual legal situation to be in. So as per the recommendations, I would ask support for that 6-month extension, and I'm very happy to take questions, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments? I saw a hand flick up very quickly. Karen, Councillor Payne.
Yes, please. Lucy, could you please confirm that the extension will be delivered within the existing budget?
Yeah, absolutely. The extension will be delivered within the existing budget allocation. I will just glance over to the director to make sure I'm not speaking out of turn on this. You will note within the report, it does note subject to fluctuation in prices. My understanding, Councillor Payne, that within our existing overall budget position, should there be a horrible fluctuation in price, that will mean that less will be done as opposed to more being spent. I am looking over to the director for confirmation of that position. And happy to be corrected, needless to say, Mrs. Sharp.
Well, as I think as Cabinet are aware, we in general terms, we spend the money that we are given from governments in terms of maintaining our highway network. So it is dependent on the allocations that we get at that point in time from government. It is an additional 6 months, but based on the terms of the existing contract.
Does that answer your question, Councillor Payne?
I really want to know that we're not going to spend any money additional money on the extension.
No, we're not spending any additional money on the extension.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions or comments? No. So before we have the Portfolio Holder and Cabinet recommends to Council to approve the extension of the current highways term maintenance contract upon reliance of Regulation 72 (1) (b) of the Public Contract Regulation 2015 by an additional 6 months from the 1st December 2023 until the 31st of May 2024 to ensure services continuity during the commissioning period of the new RCC highway term maintenance contract. Can we please have a show of hands if we're in support of that, please? Thank you very much. That's unanimous again. Thank you. Councillor Walters, you may now return if you can hear us. Thank you very much. We now move on to item 8, which is the COVID-19 update and approach to continued use of emergency powers. And the decision recommendations is that we note the present position in Rutland in respect of COVID-19 and notes the continued applicability of the civil emergency delegation. Obviously, we all know we're still just emerging from the pandemic, and I think it's now being changed. Is it an endemic now? I'm not quite sure. But it's a process. There is still time to recover. The schools need support. There's lots of things ongoing, and I think it's paramount that we remain in a similar position. So I'm happy to propose that we continue on this journey for a little bit longer and review at every month when we come to our cabinet meeting. So if you're happy, I would like to recommend this, that we continue on this journey. I don't know whether anyone wants to add anything. Mark, do you want to come in on that?
No, it's just to say, obviously, there's some uncertainty about how things will pan out. We've seen, the national picture fluctuate, including our figures. They've had a significant drop in the last week compared to where we were previously. So it's going to be interesting how this plays out. You're right that we're now learning how to manage this situation in an endemic way, as opposed to seeing it as a pandemic. But it's really difficult for us to understand what the future will hold. The other bit was just to flag that I think Phil noted in his paper that there may be some further changes the government want once they understand the powers they want to give local authorities in the long term. So we'll make those changes. I think for our benefit, we should see ourselves through the winter. And then we can make some significant decisions around the emergency, please.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rizal, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. It's probably really saying the same thing as Mark has just said. I think there is still uncertainty out there. That isn't to say that we should, just hold our horses on everything, but there is still clinical uncertainty out there. And I think it's wise to stay where we are for the time being and review regularly, as you've said.
Thank you very much. So if we can, by show of hands, just show that we're in support of that. Thank you very much. That's unanimous again. Thank you. We now move on to item 9, which is the commissioning plans for wellness and prevention services, and that's over to Councillor Walters. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So for the past several years, a range of services have been placed into one basket with Citizens Advice Rutland, and we are now coming towards the end of that contract. It appears a perfect opportunity to review the way in which we commission those services, and this is particularly true in view of the COVID epidemic and also the changes that have taken place since the service was first commissioned. For example, when it was commissioned, we didn't have Admiral nurses, we didn't have social prescribing, we didn't have a primary care network and various other items. Some of these services are statutory, but many of them are not. And we're looking to recommission in a different way as laid out in the papers. An important thing to say is that we are going to continue to support Citizens Advice Rutland with the statutory service it provides in terms of information and advice, but we are looking to reduce the amount we pay towards Citizens Advice on a taper over the next several years. Perhaps one of the disadvantages of the system we've had in the past, with a guaranteed amount of money going to Citizens Advice, is a perverse disincentive for them to look for other sources of funding. And we believe that their service will remain viable with the grants that we're proposing, and that we will be able to pull out more money, make more savings in years to come. So the paper is as written. I look for your support on all of the items in the recommendations, Chair.
Thank you very much. Open to questions or comments? No, I'm not seeing any questions or comments. The recommendations are: approves the plan for future delivery of wellness and prevention services. 2, approve a procurement of the sensory impairment and housing contracts. 3, approve the award of a grant to Citizens Advice Rutland towards the provision of Rutland's information and advice service. 4, delegate the sign-off award criteria and approval of the contract awards for the sensory impairment and housing contracts to the Director for Adult Services and Health in consultation with the portfolio holder for health, wellbeing and adult social care. So if we can have a show of hands for those that are in favour. Unanimous. Thank you very much. We now have to consider whether we can take the next item by remaining in public. And I'm open to any discussion on that. If we do feel we need to go into exempt, then we need to do that now if possible. So I guess as it's your paper, Councillor Walters, are we able to cover the bulk of this without going to exempt is the question I have for you.
I would very much prefer to consider it in open session if possible, unless any members wish to discuss the fine detail of the exempt paper.
So I'm happy to progress in open session. If we need to go into exempt, then we can do that partway through, but please consider what you're talking about and how you phrase it to make sure that we remain correct. So over to you, Councillor Walters, on Afghan locally employed staff LES relocation scheme.
Yeah, thank you. This is a scheme which has garnered considerable public comment in Rutland. There seems to be overwhelming support that this county, being so closely involved with the military, should take an active part in this relocation scheme. The exempt papers refer to the numbers, locations and financial arrangements regarding this. We shan't go into those details unless necessary, but I do commend to all members and seek your support that we take part in this relocation scheme. However, at the same time, I wonder if our officer, Mr. Morley, would like to also mention a proposed new scheme that we may wish to consider at this same time.
Thank you, Councillor Walters. There is also the Afghan citizen relocation scheme that isn't specifically for military staff, but perhaps people who have assisted the military in other ways. People such as journalists, people such as women and children who can be disadvantaged in Afghanistan, other groups who have spoken out against the current regime, and the government are looking over the next 3 years for support for 20,000 people for this. The funding has been confirmed as the same as for the LES. However, risks are that we don't really know the needs of the people concerned. Possible pressures on our own housing, but of course there is private housing. The people will be eligible and have recourse for public funds. They will be eligible to work from day one. So it could also be that we attract very positive people to input into our local economy. And that's really it. It will be good perhaps if myself and Councillor Walters could have the decision delegated to us whether we look closer into this scheme, because we need to let the government know by Friday that we are indeed interested in this scheme as well as the LES and can support.
Thank you.
Yeah. Chair, could I just ask whether Mr. Horsfield would confirm if that's an appropriate arrangement to make?
Thank you. I was going to do just that.
Very happy to confirm that both. I think what is suggested, as far as I can see, would be an amendment to number 1 on the list that Cabinet approves the proposal to formally participate in the Afghan LES relocation scheme and delegates authority to the Director of Adults and Health in consultation with the portfolio holder to enable the Council's participation in other Afghan relocation schemes.
Thank you for that. Councillor Rizal, you have your hand up.
Chair, thank you. It is just to support the paper and the news we've had this morning in its entirety. Having experienced engagement with refugee relocation as far back as the Balkans, it strikes me that there is opportunity for everybody, and I've been particularly struck by the generosity of spirit and practicality across the county as people have dug deep into pockets, into garages, into all manner of their lives to support those who literally walk away with the clothes on their back. So I think we've got an opportunity to recognise the depth of feeling amongst our community, support the portfolio holder and officers in taking this forward.
Thank you for that. Councillor Wilby, you have your hand up.
Yes, Chair, thank you. No, I would agree that we are under duty bound to help this cause, and I think that Councillor Walters and John Morley are best placed to look and do things quickly and with a reasonable eye on our budget on what we can afford and what we can do. So I'm very happy to endorse.
Thank you. Any other comments or thoughts? Thank you. I would just say I think it's absolutely the right thing to leave the portfolio holder and John Morley to look at the options and what is possible at such short notice from the government to be able to make decisions through a process. It's good that we can move in a relatively swift way. So if there are no more comments, I would like to ask that Cabinet approves the proposal to formally participate in the Afghan LES relocation scheme and delegates the authority to look at further involvement with schemes to John Morley and Councillor Walters, portfolio holder, and then approve to enter into an agreement with Charnwood Borough Council to act as lead authority for the coordination of the scheme. Is that happy? Are we all able to support that? Fantastic. So we have a show of hands, please. Fantastic. That's unanimous. Are there any items of urgent business?
Not that we're aware of, Chair.
Thank you very much. As there is no further business, I declare the meeting closed at 10:25. Thank you very much, everyone.
Cheers.
Bye all.